Hey guys, if anything has to go wrong, it will. I mean, this is Murphy's Law and it's the first one. I mean, my intro video people is supposed to be showing, and I'm going to still show it nevertheless. I'm still going to show it nevertheless. You're seeing all the beautiful faces that are with here with me on the first session of the podcast summit. I'm actually looking at my screen here to see that my video is going to be playing. I did all of this before. Can you imagine? I did all of this before. Technology, my God. When you're podcasting, please take note. All the people who are watching, listening, you would know that if things are to go wrong, it will. As a podcaster, you just need to roll with it. And I have some beautiful people here who are just giving me such great vibes and energy. They're telling me, don't panic, Corinne, don't panic, don't panic. And I'm like, I'm panicking, I'm panicking. This is what happens on the back end when we have guests coming in. And here is my intro. I'm still going to play it like a diva. Here we go. Hey everyone, this is Corinne Lafont, host of Between the Lines, and I am surrounded by fellow podcasters. And it's great to have them here. They're also going to be part of my panelist speakers, contributing to the discussion today on why a podcast. This is the first in 5 sessions for the month of August on the Podcast Summit 2022. And you're going to be seeing the dates. If you haven't paid attention to the description in the event page, all the dates are there. You're going to be constantly reminded. You're going to get all the links necessary. Stay with us till the end. There's a lot to show and share with you. And we look forward to seeing you continuously every Wednesday at the same time, same place. Share the event, tell your friends. There are people who want to start a podcast, who are afraid of starting a podcast, who have been thinking about it. You know, that's where it resides. They just think about it. I've been thinking, but no action to follow it. And so we hope at the end of each session, every Wednesday in this month, or by the end of the month, you would be inclined to want to start your own podcast based on who you're seeing here today. Not everybody's here today. This is who could make it today, and you might see the faces change over time, or you might see consistent faces for the entire month, which would be cool. But either way, I'm happy to have them. And you can see their name showing up there. If I were to talk about each one of them, it will take me the entire hour. So as we go along, they are going to share a bit about themselves. They're going to obviously tell us what their podcast is, the name of their podcast, because I mean, you're going to be spending the month with us every Wednesday. So they don't need to give you everything about themselves today in this hour. Over every Wednesday, they'll be able to drop a little bit. And by the end of the month, you'll be besties, right? So let's talk about why a podcast. Oh, and before we do that, I want to encourage persons. We are streaming live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Wherever you feel comfortable to watch and engage with us, please do. And when I say engage, I mean come at us with the questions. We have the answers for you. If we don't, we're going to come back and give it to you. It may not take a week. It may take a week, but it may not take a week. But we are going to engage with you in the comments. Somehow, you can tag us, talk to us, engage with us live, engage with us in the comments, however, wherever makes you feel comfortable, LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. We would love to engage with you. So, why a podcast? Because I'm the host, I'm going to leave it to everyone else to talk first, and I'm going to start from Karina, then go to Kathira. I like to call her Kathira. She's Katira. Then the guy, or I should start with the guy first because he's the only man in the group. But okay. So, so I'm going to go with Karina, then Katira, then Bill, then Leah, and then Valerie. And of course, they are free to jump in at any point in time in the discussion. No particular order. Yeah, this is not school. So, why a podcast? Karina, why did you start a podcast? Why did you feel the need or the want or desire, or did somebody force you to do it, or you felt compelled through business, or you felt everybody's doing it, let me do this too? What is it?
I have been a radio host for the last 5 years on the Artist First Radio Network. And I absolutely love doing the show, but I wanted some more connection to my guests. I wanted face-to-face. I wanted there to be more intimate. And so I started for YouTube podcast. That started in 2019, and then it went to audio podcast in 2020. And it's been going ever since. It started off as Behind the Pen, a journey for writers, because I'm a published author. And so I wanted to give some promo for other authors and let people that don't know what goes on behind the scenes to know, because it's about time they did. And then I thought, well, it's not only authors that use a pen. Artists use a pen, musicians use a pen. And so it became an artist journey. And that just opened the whole field of new guests, celebrities, and everything. And it's just been amazing. It's been an amazing journey so far.
Awesome. Katira. Let's hear from you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katira, and my podcast is Editor Knows Best. And I started the podcast as a platform for Black authors and other literary creatives to be able to share their stories and experiences, and be able to also share advice with our listeners who are also authors who are either new to the field or interested in pursuing, a writing path. So I created Editor Knows Best for there to be a space for us to feel welcome and celebrated and have a chance to share out about our backgrounds and inspire others to continue on their path to becoming self-published authors.
Awesome. Bill.
Yeah, so my podcast is actually called Patchwork Heart Radio, and on that I actually host a few different shows. So you can find that at patchworkheartradio.org. But there's a couple of different shows. I have YouTube shows. I have audio only shows. My perspective comes from a Catholic Christian background, so that's the flavor of my shows. But recently I got into doing a lot of different video stuff, and actually live switching video with guests on YouTube and Facebook and all that, doing through the live stream of the podcasting as well. So we've been doing some of that. But yeah, that's kind of my background. I also do a lot of different audio production. So from the production standpoint, I edit for EWTN Radio, which has 500 stations worldwide. I edit the Bear Wozniak Adventure. And then I also do podcast support for people who want to start their own podcast but need a little bit of a touch up or some of that. So that's what I do. Excited to be here and talking with all of you and sharing. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. Leah.
Hey y'all. So my podcast is called Hey Queen Thrive. So I will say I was a podcast listener before I was a podcast host. And so I love listening to a whole bunch of female-led podcasts about a variety of different shows and different topics. But I didn't really find a podcast that spoke to everyday women, entrepreneurs, authors, just the everyday person. And so I wanted to create a show that really would share a variety of different experiences for women. So it's a show by women for women. And we just talk about everything related to womanhood. And so I'm excited to be a part of this panel and be a part of the conversation.
Awesome. Valerie.
Hi. So I'm saying good morning from the Philippines. Hello, everybody. My podcast is called Change Makers with Valerie Fisher. So first of all, change makers because it, when people tell you you have to find your why. So I did that first. I'm one of those people, and the words change is from that because I feel my why is to inspire courage to create change. So the word came from there, and then when I was trying to find out who my market really is, I realized it's new online entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And entrepreneurs are change makers. So it just kind of was logical to name it after change makers. And the objective really is to, number one, to inspire new online entrepreneurs, who's my target market, in the first 3 or 5 years of their business, to know that they're not alone in their journey. That even, people, entrepreneurs, business owners who are already successful also went through what they're going through right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Mm-hmm.
number one. And also to feature other new online entrepreneurs who might help them in their businesses. So like I interview, people who are new in PR who may be hired by other new online entrepreneurs in the same market. So it's kind of become a marketplace slash, something inspiring. And I really started it for visibility. It was a challenge to myself. I first did online, like a Facebook Live for 30 days. And then I saw what I could do with it. And then, switched it to audio, just captured the audio and started the podcast. That really was it. There was no, bells and whistles. It was really just giving value from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Awesome. Artie, why did you start your podcast? Were you forced into it? Who pushed you over the ledge? Was it for business? Was it for personal? What was the motive behind starting your podcast?
So I started to really believe in the concept of health and wellness for myself, and then wanted to share that journey. And so, what better format than running some type of podcast? So I remember starting with just an audio of parenting tips on Anchor, like about 3 years ago, and then I really enjoyed doing that. And then I was on several podcasts, and then someone just brought up to me, why don't you think of doing your own? And so that kind of was the trigger to inspiring me to do it. And so my podcast is called Light Up Your Life, and it's on the Talk for Media platform, and really different topics on alternative health and health and wellness, but it covers everything between mental health and trauma and you name it. We kind of have talked about a lot of different topics. So, yeah.
Cool. And let me tell you about me. So I wanted to get my voice heard. I have a voice and I wanted to get my voice heard. I have my opinion on things, the way I think, and I wanted to disrupt. People always say, Corinne, you're disrupting. I wanted to disrupt the thought patterns. I still do that. I wanted people to start thinking, not necessarily the way I think, but to challenge the status quo. And this is not necessarily political or religious, but just challenge what you have been taught to this point, and to really question a lot of the things, not just to accept everything that we have been told. And we know the person that we have become, our attitudes, the way we behave is because of what we have been told, whether through our parents, friends, schools, teachers, church, it doesn't matter what it is. And so it is really to question. And so by me interacting with people from various parts of the world, it allowed me to hear what others were thinking, their thoughts on certain topics. So I cover a wide range. I don't limit myself to a particular niche. So, like when I listen to artists about health and wellness, when I listen to Bill is about Christianity, along those lines. Um, I wanted to learn from various places, spirituality. I'm an author as well, I'm publisher, so I wanted to hear from that perspective. I'm a speaker, so I wanted to hear persons who are in the speaking industry, entrepreneurs, relationships, toxic relationships. So it's really like building a newer version of ourselves through interacting with other persons, learning more about myself in the process through the conversations, challenging myself on what they brought to the conversation, and thinking about it and be like, that person made a point, and I never thought about it that way. And that person could be thinking the same way about something I said. And so it's a constant growth for me. It's intellectual stimulation. I'm intellectually stimulated. And so that's the person that I am. And so I'm always challenging, how could I do this better? How can I be better? How can I think differently, have a different perspective? And as a result of that, because of that's the nature of me, I tend to, like I say, create disruption. So when I go into meetings, um, or I'm leading a team and I come with a particular type of thinking, they're like, what? you know, we never thought of that, or really, or how? Because they're still thinking in the traditional matrix, if you want to call it, realm, you know. And I'm coming from a different perspective. I'm not here to keep blurting out the same things we have been told all along. So I don't limit myself, but it's not that you shouldn't limit yourself if that's what you want to do. And when I say limit, it's not a negative connotation. I mean niching. So if you want a niche, or some people say niche, if you want to do that, that's fine. And just really work on that particular area. But for me, my personal thing, and as you would notice, everyone here has their own different reasons why or how they got into it. Like for Artie, she mentioned it was Facebook, or something like that. And then, or for Valerie, you just transition. As a result, you realize. And the time, just to add this bit, the time I did my podcast, it was still new. Some of you, like Karina, started in 2019. It was just recently. I started in 2012. Podcast was very new at the time. So people were now hearing about it. And, people are hearing more about it now. And they could easily just put in podcasts and find platforms and everything they might want to find. But when I did it back in 2012, it was very, very new, and so I was delving in a space. But we're going to go more into that as we go along throughout the months, on Wednesdays. Now we want to just focus really on why a podcast. Why would we want to encourage anyone to start a podcast? What sort of benefits, for example, it has brought to us? Talk a little bit about niching, why niche, why not a niche, and the sort of just touch on the sort of equipment that you use. Because you see, I want persons to walk away from this summit realizing that we are real people, everyday people on the street. We do the same things you do. you know, um, we are wives, some of us girlfriends, we're single, we go through the same challenges, we feel the same emotions, we bleed like you, we eat and store and all that stuff. So we're just like you. And so we want to relate to the persons who are just like us, but may have inhibitions or hesitations in getting started. And I want them to leave with the concept that they can do this. And you don't need all the bells and whistles, like how Valerie was saying, all of that to get started. You just don't. Okay? You just don't. So, why a podcast? And we're going to go back. We're going to start the other way around. We're going to start with Artie and then move around, or whoever wants to go first is fine. But why a podcast? Persons listening to this, why would you encourage them to start a podcast? What has been the benefit? If there's one benefit for you, what would it be? Who wants to go first?
I can go.
Sure, sure.
I would say for me, professionally and personally, I've encountered people that I probably might not have ever come across. Corinne, you being one, you're in Trinidad and Tobago, so to
There
be
you go.
able to
Yeah.
encounter you, and then from different guests on, and having them come on um, from different arenas is by far being the number one thing I can think of.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And hold on there, Artie. This was before the pandemic, okay? So we met before the pandemic. So when people are thinking, "Ooh, there's this new term, virtual or online as a result of pandemic," we were doing this thing before, people. We were doing this thing before. So you have no excuses now if you were living under a rock, sad to say, before. Now you have no excuses. And I see my sweetheart James. Everybody's my sweetheart, okay? But you're special, James. Mwah. So James has been one of my guests. As you can see, he already admits it. He was one of my first guests on my show. Many times over too. Can I say, James, am I lying? No, he's a repeat guest. People always have fun on my show. So that's James. And I want to also feature, before we move on, Delano. Love you, Delano, darling. He says the nature of self-awareness and self-development. I can't remember what we were talking about when for him to put that, but yes. I guess why a podcast? Delano, you too have a podcast, don't you? You need to interact with us. You have a podcast. Right. So what were we talking about? What's the one benefit? Who wants to go next?
One benefit for me is visibility. So
Mm.
it's actually media. In media, especially if when you're starting as an entrepreneur or a salesperson, there's three things you can do. You either build your own, you borrow, or you buy. And when you're starting, when you're just in the first, again, 3 or 5 years of your business, you can't really buy. Not everyone has that opportunity or has that budget to buy media for themselves. So what do? Number one, you build. You create your own, and then you add value to yourself. And then you also borrow, meaning you guest in other people's podcasts so that you borrow their credibility, you borrow their authority. So if there's one thing that benefits me, whether it's hosting or guesting, it's media, it's visibility.
Awesome. Who wants to go next?
Well, I
Sure.
would say for me, it's encouragement. So I'm also an editor. So on my journey to becoming an editor and starting my own businesses, I didn't have an official mentor along the way. There wasn't a podcast that I listened to that helped me get to where I am. So I feel I feel excited to be able to have the podcast so that people who are on their journey to becoming publishers or working in the literary field have a platform they can tune into and get that support. Even though it's not in person, every other Monday they can tune in and hear from other editors and other authors and literary creatives to get that inspiration and to get feedback and recommendations. So I feel that the words of encouragement are very powerful, even via podcasts.
Awesome. And I'll tell you something, Katira, Kathira. Oh Lord, forgive me. um, what you're saying there is also even relevant during the isolation we had in the pandemic, where persons needed that connectivity. We weren't able to go out, socialize, and the only thing you had was online. Yeah. I mean, people were zoomed out and just by watching and stuff, but the podcast allowing to talk to someone. We're humans, call in, ask a question, or even use it as therapy. to talk about how they're feeling, what they're going through, because what we were going through psychologically, mentally during that time. And some of us are still going through it because it's not over yet. So it allowed for that sense of encouragement and support at that particular point in time. And that's even a good niche, if you're talking about niche for persons to get into, in a podcast, in terms of support, a podcast for support. Call in, ask your questions. We are here to help. Especially if you're probably in the psychology field, or that sort of mental health awareness. I think Leah mentioned something like that. If I'm wrong, I don't know, correct me. But it's also an area that you can offer. Yeah. Who wants to go next? One benefit.
I would say for me, it was storytelling, like letting people know that there's so much power in their story and that their stories matter. I think during the pandemic, especially, people were craving for an outlet, right? So for me, starting a podcast where I was allowed to, or I had the opportunity to meet so many amazing people all across the globe and start the conversation with their story. I think that was definitely a big benefit, because sometimes one thing that social media does is the highlight reel. People see you pop up on the scene and they assume that you were always there, right? But when you hear that backstory, when you hear like, hey, no, I struggle with depression too, and I went through these issues too, it kind of added to what Valerie said, not only increases your visibility, but it increases that sense of community and connection. And that's one of the reasons why I think having a podcast is so important.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome, awesome. That supports what Katira was saying before as well. Who wants to go next?
Shoot, I'll go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One thing is to help creatives get heard, to be known. It's such a big world out there. We have the opportunity now to spread their message, to let people hear about what they do, the books they've written, the music they make, the illustrations, how amazing their art is. I've got that platform now to do that for these unknown people, and
Wow.
that's one of the reasons why I started up Behind the Pen, was to just allow them to have that platform to be known, and to finally get their work out there. And James Hill, if he's still listening, I recognise the name straight away. You've been a guest on my show as well. I remember having a good laugh with you. Um, gets
James,
around, doesn't he,
James, you've been
James?
around. I'm
He
watching
does
you,
get
James.
around, doesn't he? Yeah. So yeah, that's the whole reason, and why I keep on going, and why I will continue going, because there is always people out there that have so much talent and nobody knows who they are.
Wow. Wow. Isn't that powerful?
Yeah.
Isn't that powerful? Because it does give the opportunity for somebody to be known. And that's another reason why I also do my podcast. I provide the platform for persons to be seen and heard. If you consider yourself an unknown, you will be discovered. It might be today, tomorrow, but at some point, somebody is going to find you. They're going to find you. Yeah,
Yeah.
Bill.
All right. No, absolutely. You're right. And, the one thing I think is that it's also an alternative source of media because, at least for me, I've worked in media for a long time, worked in radio. And what you see oftentimes a funded agenda from all different types of television and radio stations. They're funded. You turn on the radio, you listen to the same five news stories as you see or you read, and podcasts offer an alternative and they allow you not to be censored as well. I think that's one of the big things. I don't censor anybody on my shows.
Mm,
And there are journalistic integrity that takes place, especially when you're doing this. We're doing it from a place that is fair, that is respectful of others, um, and also offers them a platform where they can share their heart without this big funded network telling you what you can say and what you can't say on their shows. And so it's a big reason why I encourage people to do this. I think you're all right about just jump in and get started, and make your mistakes, and then you can always um, come out and say, "Hey, I can always use a little bit of help," and stuff like this. That's the reason why you're watching something like this too, right? Because you're looking for a little bit of help. So, that's why we're here.
That supports what I was saying earlier. I had a voice. I have a voice. And everyone here that you're seeing have a voice. And who is listening and watching, you too have a voice. And it that's the reason why I never went traditional media. It's not that I never checked it out. I checked it out. But here's the thing. To get started with traditional media, you have to find your own sponsors. And you have to make sure you keep them happy to keep paying, because remember, it's business. With this, you don't necessarily have to do that. Over time, as you grow, if you want to scale and take it, to another level, you can do that. But if you want to get started right after watching this, you can. You can. You don't have to say, my God, I have to find sponsors and I have to work out a business plan. And how many people here worked out a business plan? Raise your hands. How sad for all of us, but good for all of you watching. Good, good for all
We
of
should
you
have
watching.
more sense. We really should have more sense, shouldn't we? Yeah.
No, I am happy not to have any sense, because I got started and and I have my podcast. And that's why we're here today in the summit. Okay, I am happy not to have sense. So, so people, this is just to prove to you and to show you that you don't need to have all the ducks in a row. Like I said in a post of mine, where a friend Davina, where she and I have done some work together. And she's like, where are the ducks? Where are the ducks? She has never seen any ducks flying in a row or walking in a row. Who says ducks have to, don't feel you have to line it up. Now, if you want to go traditional media because there's some sort of status around that, you're on FM, whatever, 90, whatever, you could go right ahead. But I could tell you, you wouldn't get started as fast and be able to meet people worldwide. And can I tell you, in terms of a benefit, the analytics, traditional radio doesn't give you the analytics at all. You don't know who is watching, who is listening, where the demographics, you can't tell at all. At all. Another benefit that I want to add is content, content, people. If you were having problems writing a blog post, you have no more problems again. It's in your podcast. It's in your podcast. If you had problems doing a clip, it's in your podcast. If you had problems coming up with any ideas to talk about, it's in your podcast. If you had problems mentioning the name Bill Snyder or whatever, he's in your podcast as a guest, and you can mention Bill Snyder or Valerie. I have people here from Greece, Philippines, where again, US, I'm in the Caribbean. Auntie, where are you?
US.
You're in the US. So, hey, people, if you want to say that you are global, you talk to a global audience, they're in your podcast. You don't know who is listening on traditional radio. Am I right or am I right, people? Tell me. Somebody say something. Yeah.
The radio station that I work with for the last 5 years, and why I started the podcast, they are not traditional. They are independently run. The radio station that I edit for, a show called Flashback, they are independently run. The podcast I produce for Remember When, the host is blind, so I produce his podcast. It's again independent. It's all about independency. Yeah. It's about doing it yourself, having the reins then not to be pulled in, and like Bill said, to have that word's gone.
That happens to podcasters every now and again.
Yeah,
don't worry.
Yeah. When you're forbidden from saying certain things,
censored.
Censored. Thank you.
No
Yes.
problem, honey.
So so you don't have that when you're an independent podcast, and you may upset somebody's feelings out there with something you say, but
Of course.
that's going to happen, if they
Mhm.
don't want to listen to you, then they just turn off the dial. But there's
Hello,
plenty of other
please.
people out there who
Hello,
want to
please.
listen. They want to listen, and they will continue listening, and they
Yeah.
will tune in every time you have a new podcast. They will subscribe to you. They
Mhm.
like what you have to say. They like the guests that you have on are interesting and entertaining enough,
Mm.
and there is just like you said, there is such a range of topics that people can talk about. You don't have to have a niche. Just turn that podcast, turn that camera on, press record, and start your first podcast. It's simple as that.
I love how you started that, and that segues us into the niche. To niche or not to niche? That is the question. Karina basically already answered that. Kasaira, to niche or not to niche?
I think it depends on the person. So I did niche again, or I do have a niche for my podcast. Again, I typically interview other Black entrepreneurs and those in the literary field. So, I mean, I think it depends on what you want to talk about and your target market. Some people have very broad podcasts and they cover any and everything. I think for the sake of making it more streamlined, it could be easier to have a niche. That way you know where to look for your guests and the topics that you are considering. But it's all subjective. So you have to figure out what works best for you, what you enjoy the most, and what you have time for. So just do your due
Very good.
diligence to figure
Very
out
good point.
what's
Very
best.
good point. To niche or not to niche? Who else?
I have a niche.
Mhm.
So it's for new online entrepreneurs, which is kind of, limiting for some. But when you think about it, when what do you want, like the objective, it needs to be clear to you what your objective is. So if your objective is to serve and help new online entrepreneurs, it doesn't mean that you're only guesting new online entrepreneurs, because they also need help with inspiration, knowing that somebody else has already done what they want to do, or they need like a more holistic approach, something about their mental health, or something about personal development, because that's also something that new online entrepreneurs need. And so that's one, the objective of your podcast and where it fits into your whole business, if you have a business. Because for me, for example, the podcast is more for marketing and branding myself, so media. I don't need to monetize it yet because that's where it fits.
Mhm.
But if you find that you have enough market and that you have enough audience for it, then eventually you can monetize. But that shouldn't stop you because you're thinking that you have to immediately monetize a podcast. It doesn't have to be that way. It just has to have place on your business.
Awesome. So you need to know where it fits and if it fits you. So don't go out there in the
Yes.
shopping mall and buy something that doesn't fit you and think that you're going to look good. Make sure make sure that you
Yes.
pick the right thing that fits you. What fits Valerie is not going to fit me.
Yes.
What fits Bill, I am not certainly going to wear it. So make sure what you get fits you. Okay. To niche or not to niche, Bill? What do you think?
Well, for me, my audience it tends to be Catholic Christian because that's just the angle my podcast presents. That's the angle I come from. However, one of my podcasts, which I call Young Catholics Respond, underneath my umbrella of Patchwork Heart Radio, it's real simple. What I say is I am going to talk to anybody, but it's going to come uh, through my Catholicity is going to come through. I think that's true for anybody. Like their position, and their personality should shine through, right? So when you talk about niching, think about your personality. I really liked what you just said about, if it fits you, you should do it. If it doesn't fit you, you shouldn't do it. Be comfortable in your own skin, you
Oh yeah.
know, and recognize that, the other thing is, uh, Karina, when you were talking about, offending people, I know that what I say is gonna, not strike a chord with everybody, or it's gonna offend people, and it's okay. It's okay to do that. If you're not
It's
offending somebody,
okay.
I think I think you have a problem. You know, because you're
Bill,
so
Bill,
there you
what you
go.
saying? What you saying, Bill? If you're not offending somebody, Leah, what is Bill saying?
I have to agree with him. I really do. I have to agree with him on that. If you're not offending somebody, like you might not even have the great content, right? Because I think this about podcasting. Think about why people tune into podcasting, right? They're trying to be educated. They're trying to be entertained in
Mhm.
a specific kind of way, right? So for me, I don't think whether you niche or you don't niche doesn't really matter. I think it's really about alignment and putting out the type of content that you one are passionate about, but you also know that your audience wants, right? And then however you choose to deliver that, it doesn't really matter. But because I get it all the time. People will reach out to me every Thursday once a Hey Queen Thrive episode and be like, you crack me up when you say these. Like they have their own Leah colloquialisms already. And it's like, but I'm just being me. So I think when you show up in a place of authenticity and you're in
Ah,
alignment, right? Like it doesn't really matter whether you niche down or you don't.
yeah. And that is exactly what came to me. Just be authentic, be yourself. And this is why when we started, I started to say, are you doing a podcast because it's a thing to do and everybody else is doing it? So I'm just going to go on. Like when social media started, everybody felt, oh, I need to be on Facebook. Oh, I need to be on Twitter. Oh, I need to be on LinkedIn. And everything. Well, now it's a TikTok rave. Whether you like it or you could do it or you could be consistent, you're just going with it. And you're like, you're not even keeping up. You're wearing the dress of TikTok and it's not looking good on you. You're wearing everything, the shirt of Instagram, and it's just not you. Why are you feeling compelled to do the things that it's hurting your head? It's stressing you. Don't do what fits you. If you have a podcast, I've listened to podcasts where people are using expletives, curse words. They're like, just, you know, and that because they attract an audience that want to just, how should I say, get things out of their system, and they leave feeling relieved. It serves an audience. I have listened to meditations. Meditations has this sort of aura about it, peace and meditation and and ah. And I've listened to some meditations where, listen to me, the curse words are coming out left, right, and center. And it is a meditative thing. I have used it because it helped me to relieve the stress. Whatever works for you, you do it. But don't wear the Bill Snyder shirt. Don't wear the Leah dress. Don't wear the Valerie scarf. It's not for you. Okay? Art, it's a niche or not a niche?
I wholeheartedly agree with this conversation on what you all said. And to piggyback on authenticity, I think it comes to transparency. So if you're going to do this, you all do turn into a public figure, right? So I think it's that idea that you have to figure out what if you have a brand and you do niche already, let's say you're in the coaching industry and you do want to bring that into your podcast, then by all means. If you're someone who's trying to figure out your niche in your coaching, then like play around with your different guests and
Yes.
you're gonna figure it out. I just say jump all in. It is awkward, and those of you who've done radio will say it's awkward in the beginning, and then like anything, you do start to get into that confidence zone. But I would say just being transparent with yourself, knowing it's a learning process, and dive in, and it will change with the ebbs and flows of time, and also your own growth, like your own
Yes.
personal professional growth.
Yeah, and you know what you're saying there, Artie, is very significant. If we look back at when we first started to where we are now, I mean, you either laugh at yourself or cry. because, or you do both, or you're rolling with laughter and tears on the floor because, you've seen how you've grown. I mean, and I want to use the final 15 minutes to kind of talk about, equipment and stuff, but just to say that you see the progression in yourself, the growth, even in the conversations that you're having with people outside of your podcast. It's not the same Bill of how much years ago. It's not the same Karina of how much years ago. And you find even your growth is taking you to the point of some people you just don't talk to anymore. Your circle have changed because you just can't have those conversations with certain people again. They're just not there with you. They're just not there, And so it is evolutionary. And this is why I say, for me and my podcast, it is evolutionary for me in my growth process, being able to have a wider conversation, a better version of myself, a better version of my guests. We both growing, we're both challenging. It's important. And you learn it. There is no race or Olympics you're into to say by this time you have to achieve this or by that time. Take your time. Enjoy the process. Knock your knee, get scratched, do whatever, learn, laugh at yourself. I think all of us here have been laughing at ourselves throughout the process. We're even laughing at ourselves today. The stuttering, the loss of words from Karina, she can't remember. I mean, hey, what? You know. So we're going to talk about equipment. Who here has the bestest, high-techest equipment? Raise your hands.
Not me.
Wow. I knew it. I knew it. It had to be you, Bill. We're going to knock you off right now. Let me see. How do I bump Bill? Because, Bill, why do you have the bestest and the latest equipment with your big time background? Let's hear it. Why?
Yeah. Mainly because my shows require it. So the different contracts that I work for, actually there's some radio networks that I work for. If I was to turn this off, you'd see a green screen, you'd see my bedroom. That's the reason why. But that's the reason why I have it up, folks.
Karina is having fun with that.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the point, though. That just none of it's super expensive. My camera is the most expensive piece of equipment that I have, and it's just a 4K Osbot camera that does some AI tracking. But having a good microphone, I always think is a of benefit to anybody. You can get a cheap microphone, like $100 on Amazon. That'll do the trick. You can also get a boom stand so that when you bang the table, you're not being heard a lot like that. That's helpful stuff just from equipment wise. I do have a board. Again, I edit professionally for radio stations, both video and audio. So I just use that because it's attached to my computer. But again, you don't need it. You can just get a USB microphone, USB studio microphone. I've even told people before, I do a lot of consulting, so I told people before, their mic was popping a lot and they didn't want to go and get a pop filter for their mic. So I told them, yeah, just put a coffee filter over it. Do you have a coffee filter at home? And they go, oh yeah, okay, put a coffee filter over it. You sound great. So there's little tips and tricks that you can use to make it work, and it doesn't have to be super expensive. The fact that I have the fancy backgrounds and stuff, it's just because I need to do it for my shows.
Oh, all right. So we separated you there because we knew you had all sort of high tech things. But of course, as persons can tell, it's because of the clients and the work that he's doing. But if you're starting right after this first session and you say, okay, I'm going to get my podcast started. Let me tell you, I started with my laptop. Some people start with their phone. Okay. And remember when I started, because I'm probably the one that has been here the longest or started the earliest, it was just audio, people. Podcast was just audio. Okay, just an audio. Now podcast has gone to what we're doing here now. I mean, live streaming, you can do video podcasts, audio podcasts. A lot of things are happening. So a basic laptop, if you have that, your phone, there's so many apps on your phone that you could do everything. I don't want people to feel, like I said in the beginning, that you have to have all of this set of things and it stops you from getting started. According to Bill, if he removes his green screen, his thing, you will see his bed. And Karina is list
Karina
clapping
is
because
on her bed. I don't mind admitting to it. This is my
no,
studio. Now,
that's right.
I do have a green screen, and I do have virtual backgrounds, and I do use them for certain panels and stuff. I hold my hand up that when I first started podcasting, I bought a USB podcaster set. And it was so cool. It was a microphone and the filter and the stand. And I felt so, I'm so professional now. And I loved it. And it worked beautifully until there was an update on my computer.
Oh.
And then it went kaput.
Long live the equipment.
I contacted the people I bought it from. I contacted Microsoft. They were blaming it on them. Microsoft were blaming it on them, and Microsoft were then they were blaming it on Microsoft. And I was like, I just put it all together, broke it up to pieces, and threw it in the bin, trash. It's not needed.
And
I
has the bed been complaining? Has the bed been complaining, Karina? Has the bed been complaining?
I understand with Bill, with his situation with the radio shows and everything, he needs definitely a better mic than what some podcasters use. But you don't need to go out and spend lots of money on amazing equipment. You can, if your podcast gets sponsors and you can afford it, and you have thousands and thousands of people tuning in, then it's worth doing that, of course. Yeah. But when you start, and we're talking about starters now, when you start, it's not needed.
It's not necessary.
Earphones, maybe a mic headset.
Yeah. I also add, because I am an NLP practitioner and I use it for my business and my brand. It also depends on the type of person you are. If you're visual, you would probably start like on video, and then you get it, get the audio and use it for a podcast. But if you're an auditory individual, you would probably start with a podcast and never mind the video. Yeah. So again, it depends on who you are. It depends if it fits you. Okay, so start. If you're visual like me, I started on Facebook. But like Bill, and I'm thinking, even just looking at the people here and hearing how they talk, I would know who are the auditory individuals, because auditory individuals will not let it go if they say or they hear like a scratch on on the wording. They will not let it go. They have to edit it the way that they want to hear it. So it depends on you. It also depends on you, and that is probably also the reason why you will get or not get a whole set of podcastings. A mic, a recorder. I don't even know what they're called because I'm visual, but I'm sure that sorry people here will know what each and every item is called.
It comes back to that authenticity, the shopping in the mall. Don't get the things that don't suit you. Anybody else wants to contribute to that?
Yeah, I was going to agree with Valerie about the visual. Like, I'm very visual, so all I need is to record it and give me the audio, and I do what I got to do. Like, so I tell people, if you're really starting out, like, seriously, don't go out here and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on equipment. No. Like, I told people my microphone that I'm using right now, I spent like $40 at Best Buy. Like, I wasn't going to spend that much money. And I think the reason why people do that is because they try to be in this place of perfectionism, right? Yes. And so I have this mantra where I tell myself, done is better than perfect. Like, I would rather get it done.
Say that again, Leah. No way did you say that. Say that again.
Yeah, done is better than perfect, right? Like, I would rather get it done than to be spending hours trying to, oh my God, I heard this here. I need to take that there. That like sometimes, like, because I've put out episodes where the audio quality wasn't great. And guess what? It's still one of the highest played episodes because people want your authenticity. They don't really care
Can I
if it's
jump in there,
perfect.
Leah? Can I jump in there as we're closing off in the final 5 minutes? Don't you realize, and I mean, all of you all can say something about this quickly. What we are fretting over, other people are not. What we are nitpicking at, the guests, the people, you're like, how could they miss that? Did they see that? They didn't, they didn't hear. They are not paying attention to these things. But the podcasters, the people who want to start, whether it is a business or a podcast, they're like, I need to have this perfect. Have you realized that? Yeah. People are, so stop the nitpicking. Stop pulling apart and being detailed and feeling that, you have to be, drinking pina colada on a beach and sailing off and doing your podcast at the same time and give the perfect view, because what you're actually communicating in my perspective is that I need to have a yacht, I need to have the pina colada, I need to have the ocean, I need to, to do that. And somebody else may not normally on an everyday basis do that. So don't put people or give people that impression that this is what they need to have to even start something. We want you all to leave these sessions knowing that right after listening to this, after this first hour, you can get started. And if you stay with us for the rest of the month, every Wednesday at this time, you're going to be hearing more and more. And of course, you're going to hear more about each one of the panelist speakers here today. You're going to get to learn more about them, more about their podcast. And of course, pay attention. I think in this 1 hour, we have 4 more minutes left. We have shared so much, even just on the topic. Why a podcast? Isn't that amazing? With how many of us here? 7 of us here. We have shared so much. Any final words before we go? Anybody want to give any final points? Don't let there be crickets now, Karina. Go ahead.
I'm so glad that I took part, and I hope everyone has enjoyed the first summit and has got something out of it, because that's why we're here at 6 o'clock in the morning, Valerie. Yeah, it's 1 o'clock in the morning here, so that's why we're here at these very strange hours, to give as much feedback as we can, and I hope to entertain you, but also give you the knowledge that you need.
No, what it is saying, Karina, is we don't have a life. That is what it is saying. We don't have a life. We do. So if you're entering into podcasting, people, let me tell you the truth. You don't have a life. Okay? But this is the life. This is the life. When you don't have a life, you enjoy what you do. You're free to be yourself. Nobody could tell you what to do, when, where, and why. You could be in your pajamas and nobody would see you if you're doing an audio podcast. You can get people calling in from all over the world at any time of day and night. You can reach people from all over the world, every different time zone. See, I have Greece awake. I have Philippines awake. I have the US awake at this hour. Come on. Where else would you be able to not have a life? It's only with podcasting. Anybody else want to say anything? Artie, what do you want to say to the people?
Oh, I was just wanted to reinforce the idea of not overthinking and just really following your intuition. We all have strong intuition that one way our childhood patterns kind of, become adults and we forget how intuitive all of us are. So just follow that intuition. I'll guide you.
Be a child again. Let me interpret that from Artie. Be a child again and play. Play. Stop being an adult. Podcasting is not for adults. It's for children in big bodies. Can you tell? Children in big bodies. It's not for adults. Do you agree, Bill?
I think it's a wonderful thing the way you just expressed that. Have fun. Have fun doing this.
Yeah.
If you're not having fun doing it, you're not doing it for the right reasons, folks. So have
Yep.
fun and do something that you're passionate about. Follow the passions that are put on your heart, because that's going to lead you to success in this.
I love it. And that's from a Christian perspective too. That's from a Christian perspective. I can assure you of that. Katira. I keep calling you 2 different versions. Yes.
Yes, I would just say, just do it, like Nike. I think I forgot who said don't overthink it. So Just go for it, and you'll get better as you go. So don't let your fear stop you from starting your podcast.
Val, what do you want to say?
I'll leave you guys with a little secret. I don't
On
like
the podcast?
I don't like my voice. Okay. I never listen to a recording again. Because I don't like my voice. Okay. I don't like my voice. But that does not stop me from having a podcast. What do? I have a VA who edits it for me. Because that's not something I like doing. I don't want to hear my voice again. So we have many insecurities. We have many excuses. We have many reasons why we don't do it. We don't start it. We just don't think about it. But when you actually do it, you will find people who will help you along the way, and you will find, you will find reasons, and you will find things that will help you. Apps, many apps, websites. There's many websites, people, other podcasters. So, don't let that stop you. Don't let the fear and the insecurity stop you.
I'm glad you mentioned about not listening back and the editing and stuff, because in the next session, which is on August 10th, if I get the date correctly, on August 10th, we're going to be talking about podcast platforms and editing. So make sure you're here, Bill, next week, because you would be key for that. Podcast platforms and editing, especially for the newbie, podcast platforms and editing. And we have some sub themes, just like we did today, in terms of that. Same time, same place. Delano had mentioned about sponsorship, because we had mentioned sponsorship somewhere in the conversation. We are not going to go into that today, obviously, but it is part of the summit over the month of August on Wednesdays. We're going to touch on that. Again, that is not something for a beginner, and it is not something for someone if that's not you. Just like Valerie had mentioned during the conversation, she's about the branding and the media and the marketing. She's not about monetizing. She's not about that. If that is your goal or objective, fine. But if it's not for you, don't feel forced to do something. Like I said, don't go in the shopping mall and put on something that doesn't fit you. This is about being authentic. 2022 and beyond is not about pretending to be somebody else. Okay? Thank you guys for being here, supporting me in this podcast summit. You guys are awesome. Awesome. I mean, this 1 hour went by fast, and we even went 2 minutes over the time. I look forward to seeing you guys next week, same time, same place, childlike, authentic, and beautiful as you are. Thank you so much to all the listeners, watchers on LinkedIn, Facebook, and what's the other one?
YouTube.
Thank you, Karina. I thank you for being here with us, watching and listening. Like I said, put your questions in. If you were shy or scared to talk to us, this is the first. We'll forgive you for today, but you have 4 more opportunities in the rest of the month to connect with us. And you can still put your comments, and our speakers, panelists are going to engage with you because they're tagged and they're connected to me and on these platforms, and they're going to engage with you. So either way, we're going to capture you. We're going to be connected, and look forward to some new faces, hopefully next week, or the same faces. Whether or not, we're going to be here. Thank you so much, people. Have a great, great evening.
Bye.